Hi, today we have a very special guest, Ranga from Omnicom Media Group. Ranga, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Indran. Lovely meeting you. I'm Ranga. I'm the CEO of Omnicom Media Group, which has global brands like PhD and OMD. We're a leading media and advertising agency.
Fantastic. So, what's the state of the industry right now?
The state of the industry is cautiously optimistic, if you will. There's a massive amount of transition that is happening in terms of how consumers are embracing content and how much attention they are willing to give advertising. And as this process is going on, established ways of reaching consumers are being changed, shifted, and both marketers and their partners, the agencies, are doing their best to be able to bring marketing solutions to them in a meaningful way.
Fantastic.
And that's putting a lot of stress in business as usual,
Right.
and makes you ask questions on how do you change, how do you prepare for the future, even as you play for today.
Right. So, how do you prepare for the future?
I think we are all running a 100-meter dash. The speed at which we are running is just like the speed at which we do 100 meters, but it's just that the finishing line never comes. So you're running at that speed, right?
Yes.
So what happens is when you do that, you create tunnel vision for yourself because you're so focused on now hitting 100 meters. So at a very fundamental level, what we need to do is take a breather, pause, and visualize where the future is going to be, and create bandwidth for yourself to create experiments which will help you get there. Now, there are no one or two specific ways in which you go to the future. You have to try multiple things, and you will fail in many things, and you will succeed in few things. Creating a learning plan and transformation agenda will get you to the future because none of us can foresee how the future is going to be. And unless you try multiple things, you're going to be stuck in your old way.
Absolutely. So, in your experience, what have you tried and failed, and what have you tried and actually succeeded?
Um, there are. I wish I could have failed more.
Right.
I could say, and learned from that to actually create success stories. Um, at a very core level, successes have come when we've been extremely people focused. Successes have come when we have created an environment for people to collaborate, people to be resourceful, and created an environment for people to upskill themselves. Now, there are multiple ways in which you upskill. You give them a training agenda which they can pull from cloud. You can create a training agenda where you can push, where you talk to them and say run training programs. And there are training agendas where you can put them on the job and make them learn. The most inspirational stuff is the youngest people in the organizations are the ones who are very hungry to learn. And I was walking about in my office and the other day, and I saw on one of the youngest planners' desk a book called the R Cookbook. And I said, wow, how come you're studying R, right?
Wow.
That's a book that she has
Yes.
picked up from the library or from the store, and that's on her desk, and she's preparing, studying that. And she said that, for me to future proof myself, I need to know how to deal with volume of data, and learning R, the software which allows us to deal with the velocity and volume of data, will help me get there. So to me, that kind of creating the environment where people want to learn, upskill, and move forward is a good success story. But environment's always a blind spot. It is organic. It happens. It happens. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So how do you create that, right? To me, that is a very interesting challenge.
So, in terms of talent, besides giving them training, how do you nurture them? Actually, even before, how do you get them in the door? Do you have any specific parameters that you have for in your hiring, for example?
At a very fundamental level, we hire for attitude and then train for the skills. So if you have the right attitude, then anything is possible. So at the very fundamental level, do you have aspiration to do more? Do you have aspiration to contribute? Do you have aspiration to lead, right? We gauge people's attitude, and once we have a good sense of, they will fuel a culture which is a learning culture, they will fuel a culture which is a fun culture, then we test them for their aptitude. Whether you know analytics, do you know, if it is a specialist role, do you know analytics, do you know programmatic, do you know marketing research, or whatever the specialist role that we're looking for. And if there are any gaps, then we put them through a training agenda. And you asked me a question, right? So what do you do to help them? At a very fundamental level, in my own personal philosophy, is what do you do to get out of the way is the question that we need to ask.
Okay.
Because if we have the aspiration, we shouldn't be the interference. Right?
Absolutely.
So the question that you ask yourself is, am I interfering or enabling? Am I interfering or am I enabling? Once you start having answers to that, then I think it becomes easy.
Okay, that's a great way of looking at it, because oftentimes the organization has this fear, and that fear is that drives them to control.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's understanding that it's letting go sometimes is the best thing you can do.
Exactly, and especially in an environment where the landscape is changing fast, consumers are embracing new ways of consuming content and advertising. If we take a very stable, static approach, then we'll be left behind. So we have to be agile, and when we are agile, you are creating you're creating action plans for multiple scenarios, and you can only guess what the outcomes could be or risks could be. So unless you empower people on the front lines, and you will become a choke point for every scenarios to be responded to, and then you go back to a stable state.
Yeah, and you don't want to be at bottleneck.
Exactly.
Right. Tell me a little bit about brand safety.
Brand safety is not a new subject, right? Brand safety is something that we all dealt with, whether we were placing a print ad or a billboard ad or a TV ad, right? Classic example is if there is a front page ad that you have already booked and there is a negative news that has happened overnight, you will try to pull out of that section in the newspaper, right? At a very fundamental level. So where do you want your brand to be present, right? So that at a very fundamental level, to me, that is brand safety. Now, when you take digital environments where there are a lot more user-generated content, there is no oversight on what content is meaningful for the brand, what content is going to fuel the brand, and what content is going to harm the brand. So one of the things that we should do is identify a list of scenarios, environments, which is going to be harmful to the brand. Identify it, include that in your blacklist or negative list, and when you run campaigns, ensure that that is properly optimized against negative keywords, harmful environments, so on and so forth, right? But when you actually put more filters when you're running campaigns, whether in newspaper or digital, when you take away options because you want more safe environments, environments which are meaningful to the brands, what you're doing is you're letting go of a lot of inventory, a lot of audiences, because the audiences are everywhere, right? But some of the audiences are consuming content which is not relevant and right for your brand. When you narrow cast into an environment which is relevant and safe for your brand, then your cost goes up, because a lot of people are looking for that narrow pipe, right? The more safe environment you create, the more tighter that pipe becomes, and more higher priced the inventory becomes. But you also have to realize that is a higher value audience rather than a higher price audience. So how do you then sell that concept to the stakeholders? How do you then not go down the slippery slope of the lowest CPMs becomes a very critical question to ask. While you keep the cost down, once you start laddering up safety filters, then there will be a balance that goes up. At Omnicom Media Group, we are very, very, very diligent and put that on top of the agenda on how we constantly revisit how we are defining brand safety, how do you ensure that our clients are in the right environment, and it's a everyday battle that we fight. And touch wood, we've been in a good place so far, but that is an important thing for everyone to focus on.
Fantastic. That's a good insight on brand safety, because at the end of the day, you are the brand guardian in many ways, and you need to protect that alongside with the stakeholders. Very true. One last question about the future that you see for marketers today. If there's one thing that they can do, what should be it?
Enhance user experience. Everything that you do, just visualize to see if it's going to make it meaningful for the audience that you're talking to. You're bringing people through awareness, consideration, trial, purchase, and it might be sequential, it might be iterative, it might be random. But ask yourselves this question, whether each interaction you created at whatever level of the funnel, has it created a meaningful experience? Has it actually elevated the user experience? And the answer to that will help us in how well we are done, how well we have enabled our consumers to gravitate towards our brand.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ranga. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks,
I really
Imran.
appreciate the insights. Thank you for coming over.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.